It was on upwards by 100 billion shillings. And Kibaki did not say anything before he died when Raila made this. So definitely there was a rip-off. There was a rip-off. This release contract, matter of fact, it's not a contract where the people of Kenya were waiting for. The court has spoken very, very clearly that they should release everything. Okay. What they give it to us, it's they were, giving us a peek behind the curtain and pretending that they are showing us everything. In fact, they are not. They need to pull the curtain all the way back. We are not going to get the truth about these things unless the government come out very, very, very clearly and tell us what transpired. Because the confidentiality clause which they are talking about, it's illegal. Illegal in a sense, they didn't tell us why confidentiality and why there is a security risk. Access to information, there are certain things that you cannot disclose everything. But in this contract, they didn't say what is it. This is it's a commercial contract paid by the taxpayers' money. They are hiding something. They're not telling us what is that confidentiality is, and it simply doesn't work. So this what Murkomen has released, it fell short, and he's really shortchanging us because he knows what is the truth, what is behind this contract. As I said it before, these people were part and parcel of this contract. They negotiated it. Unfortunately, they are caught up in this situation. They don't know how to get out of it. And unfortunately, from day one, you see, it has been the issue of transparency. We didn't have it with Uhuru, and we don't have it with Ruto. But now it is their chance to make it clean. Let's hope they will do. You see, under the access to information, the government can withhold information. You see, only with very specific reasons. They had a chance to argue it in a court, but they didn't. And the verdict from the judge, he said they must release everything what they have. Unfortunately, as I said, the ruling was appealed. We don't know. We don't understand why it was appealed, because there is something they're hiding behind. Let's hope things will come out, because now the Pandora box has opened, and it's unfortunately this contract given to the Chinese and everything from designing, from construction, from banks, name it, government to government contract. Chinese, whenever they do their contract, especially with African countries, there is this clause of confidentiality. But what we are saying, if anything, that goes against our constitution, that is null and void. We want to know the truth, and I hope they will come up to tell us the truth.
Senator, that we still don't know. I'm just looking at Article 35 of the Constitution and access of information. Every citizen has a right to access information held by the state and held by another person and required for exercise of protection of another right. I mean, that's a right that is, you cannot take it away from Kenyans. But don't you think, looking at the term of the contract...
Also read, more important, read 35.3.
35.3,
yeah. Yes.
But I'll read 3, but my question on this is this. Don't you think the release of this contract would have probably undermined the performance of this?
For me, the whole thing is that, one, the procurement was not competitive. When the Kenyan government procures, and this is not the first time we are doing Chinese funding. When the Chinese funded Telecom some time back to do some lines. They gave the money. They restricted the competitive bidding to Chinese firms. They said only Chinese firms can bid. And they bid, and the best bidder was given the contract. And that's what happens in almost all Chinese contracts, except in this one, where CBRC, which is also not an expert, in railway construction, but it's the first major railway they've done. They've done some 3 kilometers of railway in China before they did this one, and have subcontracted a lot of work. So CBRC coming in to say it is the sole agent for the Chinese government on a railway was also a strange thing, because ideally the money would have come in if the Chinese government was coming in. But remember also that that the Exim Bank got involved after the event. So if they had been before, then the Chinese money had come, the telecom had done it, then they would have said, okay, we're going to build a railway in Kenya. Can we have Chinese companies bid for it? That's what Ethiopia did. That's what Tanzania did. That's why they are comparatively much more cheaper. But this one was packaged in a dark room somewhere. Things were loaded on it, and even a decision to pay money in China, which violates the constitution of Kenya, to me, I believe, was so that they could facilitate the handling of whatever was padded onto the real cost of the railway. Yeah. So to me, I think that disclosure would not really undermine us. Disclosure was necessary. Maybe they could not disclose the designs and whatever, but the cost and how it was arrived at. You already even know that. So you wanted through the state shall publish and publicize any important information affecting the nation. So that's also it's an obligation on the state.
To
not that I just have a right to access information at clause 1B. At clause 3, it is an obligation on the state to provide the information.
Let's talk about the situation of the port. There's a lot of things. I mean, even the language, if there's a dispute in this contract, shall be the Chinese language. The law shall be Chinese law. The arbitrators shall be in China. The service shall be via the embassy of China. And Gladys Soleil told me something interesting on Monday about that. It means there's 15 days of service. So the service shall be deemed to have been effected if it's served to the embassy of Kenya in China, in Beijing. So which means in that 15 days, if Chinese decides we are not flying to Kenya and this does not come to Kenya, a dispute is already registered in China, but the service was already effected. So let's talk about the port, and I'll go to Halif because he's in Mombasa.
Before you go to the port, I want to bring up an important point.
Okay, go ahead.
That when I went to the Court of Appeal agreed with me and rendered a judgment saying that the railway was illegally and unconstitutionally acquired. So the question that arises is, why are we paying money for something that the courts have determined to have been acquired unconstitutionally?
Because we have an obligation as a country under the contract.
But you see, if we could demonstrate it was illegal, if you remember the duty-free shops,
at the airport?
At the airport, where Ali had sued the government of Ibrahim Ali or something. He had sued the government of Kenya.
Ibrahim Ali, yes.
Yeah, in Washington over the contract because the government of Kenya was not coming through. That thing was quashed on the grounds because Ali claimed that he got the contract by breaking Kenyan law, that was by bribing Moi. It came out in his affidavit, and the whole thing was quashed. Correct. So if there's an illegality that has been established in the contract, it is no longer a sovereign debt. It's a regime debt. And a sovereign like myself cannot pay a regime debt. That debt should be paid by Jubilee and the people who own the Jubilee.
It should not be passed over?
No, it should not be passed over to you and my children.
Okay.
It's a regime debt. It's an odious debt that should not be paid by us.
Okay. Very important aspect. Halif, you want to comment about that before we go to the port issue?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, you see, there is a clause in that contract. It says that if there is a dispute between Kenya and China, it will be resolved in China, not a third party, not in Kenya, but in China. It gives Kenya will be in disadvantage, completely disadvantage. And you see, the aim of this contract, we're all aware because there was a coming election. So they wanted to finish in June. That's why they call it Madaraka Express. So it was about legacy, okay? Somebody made his calculation. The president said, okay, I will live here, and the train, the SGR will live for another 100 years, so it will be Uhuru's legacy. Okay, not taking consideration the economic factor, the political factor, the social factor. You know, all these were, they didn't care about it. So it was about legacy. It was not about economic or anything.
All right. Now, take us to the port. What is the state of our port? We are told that it was used as a collateral. An interesting look at the financial agreement that was signed, I think, on sometimes in May of 20, because there were several. Let me just get that factually. So there was the payment agreement that was signed on the 6th of November 2014, but the loan agreement was signed on the 11th of May 2014. And if you look at that document, my own reading tells me that intentionally the Chinese negotiated in such a way that even making decisions about the port, about KRC, about anything touching on the railway was lay squarely with them. That's my plain reading of that agreement. So technically, if we are unable to pay this, they can make a decision and instruct the port to be remitting some money to pay them back. What is the situation technically of our port right now if we are unable to pay this? Is it a collateral? Was it just put there to enable them collect money? Will it go? What is the real situation of that port?
Now you have asked a question. Now let's open the Pandora box. You know what happened? This train is supposed to compete with passenger buses and trucks where containers have been taking. Now, after when the railway was ready to start servicing, the Chinese they put their prices on passengers and containers. It was much higher than the trucks and the buses. So the Kenya government says, no, we can't do that. We have to go below that. This is where the Chinese came up and say, now, give me the collateral. Because they knew that take and pay, it cannot pay this, the services. Okay? Mm-hmm. The whole problem, it came on that negotiations to lower the price from here to Embakasi, even though the train is much expensive now because of that last message. I mean, the last mile. You know, the trucks picks the container from the port all to the final destination and take the empty container back to the port. Okay, while the SGR it takes from the port to Embakasi, and from Bakassi, so you have to hire another truck to where the final destination, and then that the container needs to go back to the port. Those are additional expenditures. Okay, this is where the whole hulubalu they're talking about. It's cheap. We said it's not cheap. Cheap, as they said, it's very expensive. Nobody's taking the truth. But the truth of the matter, it is the Chinese who ask for collateral, and Kenya Port is a collateral.
Is a collateral.
And mind you, many people don't understand that African Star, which runs the railway, the SGR, they are being paid 1 billion shillings per month. Per month. You're talking about, this is a lot of money. Okay? Now, even if you calculate, whatever calculation you make, for the first couple of years, they couldn't collect more than 7-8 billions. Okay? It started 5, it went a little bit further up and up. Still, they cannot break even. So they are taking a lot of taxpayers' money funding this project, which is not economical, which does not make any sense. But it's about ego. somebody wants to have a name on it, and that's it. This is where the problem is. Now Mombasa is dying, okay? In as much as President Ruto says returning back the port to Mombasa, what effect? It is too late, I think. It's too little and too late, okay? Because let us see another 2-3 months, because for people importing things from abroad, it takes around 2 to 3 months till the containers come here. Let us see what system they're going to put to return back the services back to Mombasa.
Okay, very interesting. Although I haven't looked at the facts of African Star and the amount of money that they are being paid, I'll have to hold you to your word if I have it, but I don't. But let me come back to you, Senator, now. The situation of the port, and where do we stand as a country, knowing the facts, even as Halifa said it, regarding the port?
I think fraud in international relations is not allowed. International law does not allow fraud. It's not part of Kenyan public policy, neither is it the public policy of the United Nations. And I think this is a matter that Kenya, if we get a really serious government, should take it to the international courts. And the International Center of Arbitration in Washington should be able to step in and examine this contract and tell the Chinese to go to hell. Because Article 1 says the people are sovereign. And what was done against our law cannot be brought to bear against us. If you remember what happened between the Americans and the Spanish over Cuba, when the Americans took over Cuba, and the Spaniards were, the Spanish were trying to demand that the Americans should pay the debts. The debts that the Spanish government had used to oppress the people of Cuba. There's a doctrine that came out in international law whereby the concept of the doctrine of odious debt came in. The Americans said we cannot pay, the Cubans cannot pay you for hurting them. So we should not be paying the Chinese for hurting us. So the time has come whereby we need a government that can look the Chinese in the face and tell them, here, you went wrong, and expose the corruption in the whole thing. We should be ready to pay for value for money. But what was over and above that is the responsibility of the lender in Beijing. And I agree that Jubilee, the owners of Jubilee regime, and the Chinese should go to Beijing and sort out the mess, not the Kenyan people. And the port of Mombasa cannot, and it's not possible to make it as affect the issue of that collateral, because under the constitution of Kenya, the people of Kenya needed to have given that consent, either through parliament or directly. None of that happened. So for me, that thing is a nullity, it's a null and void. All you need is a courageous government to tell these people that you are not going to run corrupt enterprises in our republic. In China, they hang corrupt people. They shoot them. So why should they then export corruption? And that's what should happen. And I think if the government stands firm, I'm sure the Chinese, who try to portray an image of being saintly and whatever, will back off.
You're saying in simple terms that there is a way around this.
There's a way around this, but it calls for courage.
From the government?
Government.
And the government, you're saying President William Ruto?
Yes, right now it's President William Ruto and the system, and also Parliament and other institutions. And I would also like to do one thing to congratulate my brother Halifa, who is also a very firm and strong upholder of the rule of law, that he took this matter where the courts have this habit of saying, the court was saying, you should have written a letter to the Indian and gotten there. You should have asked for the documents. And then if you don't get the documents, you should have come to us and we would have done ABCD. But look at how long it is taking. Look at how long it's taking. Halifa got the orders. They got everything this. The same courts have, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So, to me, we should realize that where the integrity of the state is at stake, everybody should stand up and demand that this moves forward. I would right now have expected that Halifa would be having the documents on the strength of the courts having ordered that they should be given the documents. Mm-hmm. He should have had them, but he has not had them. He's also just hanging there. So this idea that the courts now become the refuge of the corrupt. And I'm sorry to say that the Constitution of Kenya lacks judges. If there's anything this country lacks, are judges who have the courage to implement this Constitution to the letter and to the spirit. And that's why we are suffering here. That's why we have got all this mess. And even if the judge, if the court said moved, when I moved to court, not a single item, not even maram, had been procured for the SGR.
Okay.
I moved in good time and would have stopped all this mess. But people played games with a lot of English and ran circles around us and whatever. And then now you find this mess. And they had to go up to the Court of Appeal to get this thing declared this is unconstitutional. When on the face of it, it was very clear that these people had done nothing. Even in the budget, you show the court the budget, this is the budget. The procurement should come from the budget. Where is the SGR here? There's nothing. But then the judges then collude. And I'm very sure the judge colluded.
That's a very strong accusation.
No, it's a painful accusation, not strong.
Very strong
it's
accusation.
It's a painful accusation.
Against an institution of the judiciary.
I'm saying, I'm not an institution, I'm saying a judge colluded. Because the Court of Appeal upheld the position that these fellows violated the law. They never followed the law. And as I'm saying, if they violated the law, why are we under obligation to obey, to be bound by violations of the law? If they violated the law, they suffer the consequences.
Okay.
They can scrap the railway and carry the scrap metal back to China. They should not burden us. And in fact, the position of the Ruto government should be that we are not paying a single shilling for an illegal contract.
But President Ruto, as a deputy, hailed this project.
He did.
Supported and even gave a timeline for breaking even.
He did.
Yes. So how do you again go back to that same?
The unfortunate thing is that President Ruto is a very good friend of mine, but I think he sometimes uses too many words. He likes hearing himself talk, and he speaks in a lot of poetry. And in this particular case, he spoke a lot of poetry that had no roots. But now he is the president. He has an obligation to defend and uphold the Constitution of Kenya. And if the Constitution of Kenya was violated, why is the Constitution of Kenya not protecting Kenyans? Is it what the paper it's written on? If it takes a letter from China, these people who wrote these contracts and whatever, of what capacity they have to bind the Kenyan? When we can't cede territory, look at when you talk of the port of Mombasa, the harbour is part of the territory of Kenya. Look at the chapter on the territory of Kenya. If you go to Article 255, to cede territory of Kenya, you need a referendum.
Yes.
Was there a referendum held to justify the use of a territory of Kenya as collateral?
Good question.
That's the question you're asking. There was none.
Okay. Halifa, we are running out of time, but I have to ask you this: where does the blame fall squarely? President Ruto was a deputy then, and he said a number of times, as a deputy, you don't have the power to make some decisions. Now he's the president. Do you believe he can take this head-on with courage, as Okia says, and resolve this for Kenya? Because it's a burden. 2034 is about 12 years away. And with defaulting, it's even loading more money, and our children will still pay for this. So do you think that's why we need courage to resolve this? Because he's now the president.
Okay, now before we go to the Chinese, let us go for our own people. People who negotiated and signed the contract, they should be held to account for every penny they did. Let us start with our own. But let me tell you something that I was talking to my own lawyer, okay, who represent me in these cases in court, and I asked him a point blank. I asked him, do you think that the government will release this contract? And he told me, no. Even if the Supreme Court tell them to make it bear that contract, they will never release it. Okay? They will never release it, because in that, if they release everything, there's a lot of fraud. So the contract itself can be terminated as null and void. If, as Okia Mtata was saying about the free duty, Ibrahim Ali in Nairobi, bribing Moi, and the court says, "Pap, both of you, it's illegality." So we are in the crossroads. But the most important thing, the bigger picture, we want the government to be systematically responsive to ATI requests. And that's very, very, very important for us. You know, if this constitution is it's our shield and defender, if it doesn't work, I mean, people will do whatever they want to do, regardless the circumstances and consequences that befell the Kenyans. This contract, it has put a lot of people, the so-called Mama Mboga, okay, the wheelbarrow people, in a lot of mess. Now, if Ruto wants to clean, let him tell us exactly what transpired. Now, if he claims that he was vice president, that he has no power, okay, now he has the power. So the Kenyan people are expecting him to be open to them, to tell us exactly what went wrong and who pocketed what. Because I tell you, without blinking my eye, this contract was inflated and people ate a lot of money. I don't know how far higher. It could be very, very, very high up. So President Ruto has chance to clean up the mess, which he and former president they negotiated together this contract in matter of fact.
Okay, okay.
Yes, I think what Khalifa said is correct and is anchored on Article 236, Clause 5, which says that those people who are in public office, who, when if public funds are lost under their watch because they disobeyed some law or they did something, they are liable whether they are in office or not. Should be the starting point. And if once we lock up these people, then we can move on and say, okay, we have locked up, we have done our part, we have locked up the thugs. Now the Chinese, the guys you locked with, are in prison for breaching Kenyan law, and they acted against the law. And you had the copies of our laws that you saw that what was supposed to be done, and you are very sure you knew about our law when you are lending this money. So we are not going to honor these contracts. And this is something that if President Ruto does it, I don't care what he said when he was vice president, whether he justified it or this, whatever, that's water under the bridge. What is on the table now is that we have got this illegal contract that is being forced upon us. It's very expensive. And President Ruto has the opportunity now as the head of state to stand up for this constitution, which he swore to defend. And we will rally behind him and give him all the support he needs to tell the Chinese that not here. And let us understand that Kenya, on the African continent, is the home of the Mau Mau, who said no to the British with all their mighty guns and everything we have. So the Chinese with all their might have to get a dose of their medicine in Nairobi. Okay. So we only need a man of courage to stand up, and the country will rally behind him and say we are not paying any odious debt. And once we don't pay any odious debt, I'm telling you, this country will be on its way to recovery. Otherwise, more scams are going to be committed, and they are going to continue hunting us. And the 1 billion shilling fee that the operators of the rail are getting from us is money that can save a lot of people. Imagine if you had to throw 1 billion shillings in Marsabit today, for example. What would it do in terms of helping the people who are dying? Or just here on the shores of Nairobi, in Kajiado, people are dying. Yeah. So we are a country that people are dying, and we cannot afford to allow people to come and mess us up. Okay. And I'm sure the Chinese government is not a promoter of corruption. These actors are just Chinese people who are not the Chinese government, and these are the people that should be exposed and dealt with accordingly. Okay.
That means to run the railway per day is about 33 million shillings per day. Yeah. In a month, 1 billion. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Halif, for speaking to us from Mombasa. I know this is a subject of discussion that will go on in the coming days, and we're looking forward to a response from the executive on this. It's been 3-4 days since we started looking at these papers, and still we don't have any kind of response from KPA, from Kenya Railways Corporation, from the executive. Now touching on big issues like this that can affect the economy of the country. As a senator, perhaps these questions, I don't know if it also concerns you, but it's something that if you ask through Parliament, and now that we are having executive orders to have the CSS coming to Parliament to answer questions, perhaps we'll see Parliament putting them on the spot regarding this, and we get answers to this. So I want to thank you, Senator for Busia, for coming tonight and discussing this with us. This is something that began long for you, almost 9 years ago.
Yeah, and I would just like to say that I think the CS Murkomen,
transport,
the transport CS Murkomen is sincere and is honest.
Yeah,
and let us give him the chance to try and release these documents. I'm also going to try and give my copies to him.
Yes.
And see if we can release them so then they become sanitized or something, I don't know. But I think he's sincere in what he's doing. And let us support him.
Yes.
And let us make sure that he succeeds. And also let us also support President Ruto and make sure he succeeds. Because if Ruto succeeds, Kenya succeeds.
Okay.
If Ruto fails, Kenya fails. So let us support him to succeed, and in many things, not just in the SGR and whatever, but also, like me, I will be in the opposition. I will be a loyal. I will be part of the what you call the loyal opposition.
Okay.
Support him where he does good, but oppose him where he goes wrong.
Okay. Halif, I've run out of time. If I would give you 30 seconds for your closing remark, because I have to go. Just 30 seconds.
Okay, but just 2 seconds.
Yeah.
You know, I would really like to appeal to this current government to withdraw the appeal. And once the appeal is withdrawn and there is a court order to release everything, so if they don't, somebody will be in contempt of court.
Okay.
And that means somebody can go to jail.
Can go to jail for that. All right. A noble request from Halifa. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kia. And thank you so much for watching News Hour tonight. We've run out of time. It's a big discussion. I mean, 380 billion is not small money. Trust us to discuss this in the coming days. And of course, because the Transport Cabinet Secretary has been on the headlines for the last few days, let's take a look, because of the strike and now because of SGR, let's take a look at our video of the week, and we take you a little bit back in time when he said this. Yes, that's your copy. When he said this, take a look.
Nilikuwa kwa task force on devolved government. Niliandika, I was part of the people who wrote 6 laws on devolution. I understand devolution in Kenya like the palm of my hand. Devolution is under threat, and soon counties will be closed. The worst part of this situation is that even the Council of Governors chair ameingiza tail yake kwa katikati ya mguu. He cannot even talk. The Council of Governors, which used to have authority to speak, can no longer speak. The other governors wanasomewa na county commissioners. Governors wanasomewa na DDC. We are back to the old powerful provincial administration. And let me tell you from Baringo na munisikie. In 1963, we had a powerful devolution with a regional government that was powerful. But slowly by slowly, using the same methods I'm seeing today, county governments were bastardized. They were lectured the way Matiang'i was trying to lecture counties about pending bills. They were bastardized in the same manner county commissioners are going to preside over governors. In 3 years, devolution was closed. And the people who closed devolution are senators and those who are regional governors at that point in time. I want to say today, if it will continue in the pretext of fighting corruption, in this very manner, the way we are seeing, Aki, you will see me, in counties itafungwa in another 2 years.
Well, Kipchumba Murkomen, as a protector of devolution, then that is the second term of the Jubilee government. Thank you so much. He was protecting devolution. He said 3 years it would be done away with, but fortunately we still have devolution. Thank you so much for watching News Hour. My name is Ken Mijungu. On behalf of the whole team, Maresha Owiti earlier on sign language. Have a good night. See you next week on Monday. definitely on KTN Prime. Have a good night.